So before we get started, can I just get a quick show of hands? Who's here from out of town for the startup? Or for the South by? 2 people? Only 2? Okay, that's really good. So I honestly expected it to be more. So I want to thank Capital Factory, first of all, for hosting us and letting us be here today. And IHEG for sponsoring us. I got it right? Yeah, okay, good. It's IHEG, in case you were wondering. So I'm gonna let Michael come up and talk for just a few minutes, and then we're gonna have Krishna Srinivasan from Live Oak Partners come and give a talk on the Austin startup scene. So.
All right, I'm not going to take much time. I know everybody's here for other reasons, but hopefully you enjoyed the food and drinks. We tried to bring something a little different. We like beer in the company, it's part of the culture, and good food as well. So I know pizza is usually the standard thing, so we mix it up. If you don't know who IHG is, we've been around for about 5 years in Austin. So we've gone through our growth spurts, and we're on another one now, so we're actively hiring Python devs on both the front end and the back end. So if you're interested, talk to us afterwards. We provide a remote network management tool set for managing the complexity of IP-connected devices, mainly in homes and businesses. So distributed locations where connectivity is difficult to manage on site. So let's say you have an Apple TV in a home and it's having problems. Our tool helps somebody like Best Buy diagnose and resolve that problem remotely. So obviously the direction of the world is we're going to more and more connected devices, Nest thermostats, Sonos. We're helping with that problem. So I'm not going to take many more time, so I want to say thanks. If you're interested in talking more, come by and see us afterwards. I'll be around all night.
Great, so I guess without further ado, we'll invite Krishna up. We'll do a Q&A session after this, so write down your questions, don't forget them. We'll go from there.
Thank you very much. I'll try to keep it brief and have an active Q&A session. So thanks for the opportunity. Wonderful to see. You need me to? Okay. Just fading in and out. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
I think it's something right where your hand. Yeah.
Okay.
You're holding it wrong.
I'm holding it wrong, yes. It's never the technology's fault. It's always UI issues. So I've been in the venture business here in Austin for 15 plus years. Joined a little firm here in town called Austin Ventures, beginning of 2000. And we were actually officed a couple of floors below here. I remember wondering, we were in the Omni for a couple of years in between offices. We started off at kind of a historic building and then stayed here for a year and a half and then moved to the destination later on 6th Street. Wondering which entrepreneur would want to come to the Omni to hang out and meet venture firms. Just felt like a very suboptimal temporary spot, having offices which stayed into hotel rooms of people, and there are stories there, but we won't go into that right now. But of course, look at 13, 14 years later, 15 years later, this has become the epicenter of startup activity in town, and so that's an example of a remarkable transformation that Austin has gone through. So let me give you a little bit of a journey back the last 15 years. I joined the business in 2000, as I said, beginning of 2000. There was a tremendous amount of capital available in the market. We were just NASDAQ at 5,000. Well, we are back again, but NASDAQ at 5,000 then. Just terrible ideas coming through the door, one after the other. People wanted to raise insane amounts of money with no prospect of revenues ever in the future. And of course, we were piling money into those things. So there was a giant mismatch between quality of ideas and the amount of capital those things were raising. We had 15, 16 firms operating in Texas at the time. And so it was a time of, felt like plenty of capital for entrepreneurs, but it was also very, it was very short-term in nature because many funds and firms disappeared. Lots and lots of startups disappeared. and then became a slow, steady decline of entrepreneurial activity in terms of capital getting invested. The number of firms dwindled immensely. So towards the end of the last decade, a lot of firms that operated in the beginning of the decade no longer existed. And and folks like us, three of us at Austin Ventures in 2010 that said, look, there's a giant opportunity in this market. There is entrepreneurial activity continues to be on the rise. There's such a limited capital available in this market. Venture capital for first round investing is a neighborhood sport. So let's come out to raise a fund exclusively focused on Austin and Texas entrepreneurship activity. So that was we decided to do that in 2010. Right analysis, terrible timing, in the sense that it was terrible time to try to raise a fund. But good luck and perseverance, the two important traits of entrepreneurship. And we persevered and raised a $110 million fund, which we closed about a couple of years ago. It's the largest fund raised in Texas, going back 7 years, with a strategy of exclusively focusing on the Texas tech market. So our strategy is to do seed, Series A's, first institutional money, we call it, investing $250,000 to $500,000 in seed stage companies. No, this is not UI. This is all UI, not UI issues now. Investing $2 to $4 million in Series A or first institutional kind of stage companies, and then active, good old style venture investing, the active investors in companies. So as we now fast forward to 2015, the things that have changed and transformed are entrepreneurial activity has simply exploded. Just in the sheer number of just high quality stuff we keep seeing around town. Capital, which really went through an incredible valley of lacking capital in the 2010, 11, 12-ish timeframe of not having early stage focused capital. Now we again have a bunch of options here in town, between us at 110, Silverton raised a $75 million fund, the S3 Ventures guys have a $70 million fund, the Mercury guys in Houston, who have a Texas and other state strategy, have raised a $100+ million fund. So between the four of us, there is plentiful amount of meaningful capital available for being first institutional money for local, Texas-based tech companies. So you can see that in the level of activity more recently. You see a lot of companies in the seed and Series A stages. More importantly, the Series A companies getting funded with millions of dollars going into them. So I think Texas is very, very much back on the rise in terms of new company formation, new investment activity. But one of my favorite things to say about the Texas market is Texas continues to be perhaps the most capital constrained yet supply rich of all pockets in the country, just in terms of sheer number of amazing talent, number of ideas, and how little capital there is, and so on. So we think of us as almost a semi-chamber of commerce, trying to convince others to come and join us in investments we make here in the market, either for our first institutional money type of opportunities or later stage type of opportunities. But again, if I trace back the 15 years of activity in this market, it's exactly the opposite of what 2000 was like, in a positive way. 2000 was, non-existent business plans, people trying to raise ungodly amounts of money. Right now, we repeatedly see the pattern of really good entrepreneurs who have, with real grit and perseverance, have managed to make real progress on little amount of capital, managed to get a bunch of customers, show that the equivalent of dogs will eat the dog food on product has got real customer interest, and then they come and raise money. So it's just a very, very healthy level of early stage activities market. So exciting times ahead for this market. Let me say one last thing before I maybe turn over for questions. In case you're wondering, how does Austin and Texas, let's say, compare with what's happening nationally in the venture market? Let's all pretend 2000 was crazy. You'll hopefully never see the market again because it was unsustainable and bad deals got done. 01 and 02 were real massive corrections in the early stage or entrepreneurial activity. 2004 started to be the first year of stabilization of venture activity. If you assume 2004 was the first year of stabilization, if you go from 2004 to 2013, every year from 04 to 13, with the exception of 2009, the venture investing on a national basis was plus or minus 10%. It was in this 15 to 18 billion dollars of capital getting 15 to 18 billion dollars of capital getting invested on a national basis into startup companies. If you look at what happened in Texas, that same band looks like $800 million to $1 billion getting invested in Texas-based companies, again every year with the exception of 2009, on a steady band. So you had kind of started to reach some equilibrium on a sustained mode of investing that was happening. Last year was complete of a zoo, was wilderness back in the Bay Area, when the entire investing actually doubled from that 15 to 20 to 35 to 40 billion dollars got invested. That's why people are all screaming the word that starts with the B for bubble in terms of what might be wrong with the valley, with companies raising few hundreds of millions of dollars to a few billion dollars and expecting a correction at the later stages of the industry. But you look at Texas and Austin, we are still seeing nice, stable, ongoing growth. Last year was like any other year. We continue to be in the $1 billion of capital deployed in the market. So it's important to have a steady, healthy, not too exuberant, not too euphoric rise, because the faster you rise, the faster you fall. So we are just delighted with, in one side of it, on one side, of course, we see a lot more capital, a lot more exciting ideas coming together, but we are continuing to be in a good balanced band in terms of overall capital deployment, not backing or being too euphoric. So I think we're at a nice point, but clearly we're seeing a lot more entrepreneurial formation. Therefore, the years from now on should continue to see pretty nice amount of growth in the local market is what we believe and have a lot of conviction. Excited to have a fund with lots of dry powder in the fund. We're very early in the fund. We have 8 companies today. 5 of them are here in Austin. Our interest very strongly is in, we have a very strong preference for companies with some level of technology. They end up being companies which are typically munging through data. I think 7 of the 8 companies are all very data-centric companies which either take data, go after doing something in some vertical industry of some kind, or doing a horizontal data play of some kind is the typical one. Most of them sell to enterprises. They all have some level of a data scientist in their ranks. Shout out to one of our favorite companies, of course. They're all beautiful children. One of our favorite companies, Step One here in the audience, working again a big data play with respect to use of large tomes of data for enabling predictive, contextual customer care. So the kind of companies we end up backing look like this. The nature of talent in this market historically resembles much more of things like that, where people are not just building the next cute some put up a website and see what happens idea. People are much more in the let's think of ways to repurpose technology in some effective fashion is the historical DNA of Austin. And so that continues to be the area where we see Austin leveraging its strengths, and entrepreneurship is more active, more exciting than ever before. So that's the macro state of the landscape. If I go back for the last 15 years, and rather than me keep droning on and on, yes, even the microphone doesn't want me to drone on and on. So why don't I turn it over to you all? I'm sure you all have questions, and perspectives to share, and I'll be delighted to make this more interactive.
So the Austin Business Journal talked about correction and pullback on VC. In Austin, was that just headline grabbing, or what insight do you have?
That I haven't seen the headline, so that must be more headline grabbing in nature, perhaps. Because if you again look, I think the core requirement for entrepreneurial activity and getting stuff financed is local fund formation. If in the sense that because Series A's end up being a local affair. Once you get a first institutional money, go raise $2 to $3 million of investment happening, it's easy for the next round of financing to go convince somebody on the coasts to come and join, given that there is a local lead investor in the market. So that's typically how the venture industry plays out. So if you take local fund existence or formation to be a barometer of how much of investing activity will there be in the next 3 to 4 years, we are at a healthier spot compared to where we have been in many, many years leading up to this. Because we, again, as I said, we have 3 to 4 funds who are really focused on the early stage market here in Texas. And therefore, you should be, we look to do 16 to 17 companies in this fund. We've got 6 companies in a Series A stage, so we look to do at least maybe 10 plus investments for us. So you can see the others looking to do that kind of number of investments. So you can see 20 to 30 new companies getting formed and invested of some meaningful scale that will happen in the next 2 to 3 years. And the companies you've already invested will receive follow-on investing from bigger checks coming in from the West Coast and East Coast. So that will create this nice pipeline of bigger financings happening in the future. So, which is why I'm more optimistic about level of entrepreneurial activity that we expect to have in this market in the future. What else?
So do you think that there is a lack of sort of later stage funds here? Do we need the sort of coastal money, or and does that put Austin firms at a disadvantage?
No, coastal money is certainly very, very good, just because you have firms that manage multi-hundreds of millions to billion-dollar funds exist in the coast. We don't have them here. So, but the good news is coastal money goes after, coastal money is a bad idea to go after the first round of financing here. But coastal money is great for Series Bs and Cs and so on. Classic example, I have a company in Houston. We invested $2 million end of 2013, and company's been on a tear, growing spectacularly every month. It's big data meets data management for e-discovery purposes. Data management for e-discovery. Hello? Yeah. It's data management for e-discovery purposes. Company was on a tear, and Series B happened within
Just turn off the microphone and do that.
Yeah. Can you all hear me? Sorry. Yeah. Let me just walk up and down and do this. Should I? Or?
Give it a try.
Okay. So these guys, one more time it stops, I'm going to use my voice box here. So this company was executed well. Series B came along. There were like 3 firms or 6 firms interested in investing in the company, and the company raised $12 million in no time. So I think people, when there is a better characterization of a business model, better characterization of revenues and who the customers are, it's much easier for coastal money to pile on into a company. In the early stages, when people have to work closely with an entrepreneur to figure out what the playbook is, figure out what a business model is, that's what requires typically local money for things. So as long as there is enough local money to invest in something, it's always very optimistic for the future rounds of financing, which are easier to attract money, not just from the coast, but actually from on a global basis. Yes?
Let's say you have a company, what stage the company should come to you, like the seed stage or Series A or what, like?
So us specifically, we actually have a motto which says, no idea is too early, right? So we have invested in 3 seed stage companies, 3 cases where companies were pre-revenue when they came to us, step 1 included. Step 1 is, take step 1 for example, a seed company when they came to us. The other 5 had revenues when they came to us. When we invest in a company at a seed stage, it's significantly a bet on the team. So it was a bet on Alex and Eric and their third co-founder who shut your ears, who we thought were good guys. We still think are good guys. So I think it's definitely a bet on team. It's a bet on size of market opportunity, size on their insight. And then we work with them over a 3, 6, 9, 12-month period, whatever it takes, to get it to what we might be Series A stage, where the product and the customer market is much better well characterized. And at the time, we try to obviously always look for, ideally, to have somebody else come and join us. That way, we get some extra validation, additional money that comes into the deal with us. So that's a typical model. So our goal when we invest in seed is to back a 1,000. Different people have different models. The multiple models work. What we don't do is to go put $50,000 into 20 companies and see what bubbles to the top. For us, we at least put $50,000 and we put money into a company in a seed stage. You like it or not, we end up spending close interaction with the company, often meeting with them once every couple of weeks to help converge it to a Series A where we can go raise. So for them, what happened is we put $500,000 in. 9-10 months later, we closed the Series A for $4 million. There were 3 venture firms who were interested in joining us in the Series A. We ended up working with one of them in that mix. That's how this happens. So it's a very firm-specific situation on how they like to do it. Our MO is very much to work
Our MO is to work with companies regardless of, can you all hear me in the back?
Yeah.
Okay, is to work sort of regardless of stage and be kind of, first, no ideas too early and first money in the company sort of thing. But we very much welcome, one more thing, very much welcome, there has been some angel participation in it, which has happened and has moved the bar and moved the company along, where they've made some good progress, have gotten some good customer validations happened. That's insanely welcome. And so we always look to cooperate with local angel community, local incubators, and so on, and pick it up maybe at a Series A stage or the next. Yes.
So you said your goal is to bat 1,000. Would you say that you're much more conservative than other venture firms when it comes to, if you're on the fence about a company, investing in them or not, based on what you know about them, because you don't want it to not, you don't want it to hurt your batting average?
Let me be very clear. Thanks for the clarification here. Venture is about losing money. We absolutely lose money in a bunch of companies we invest in. I talked about batting a 1,000 is aspirational, number 1. Big difference. But number 2, I talked about batting a 1,000 for seed stage investing. In other words, if you invest in a seed stage company, we want to try to bat a 1,000, but converting the seed stage company into a Series A stage company. Victory here is getting them to a Series A, right? Not victory is let's never lose the money in the company. I'm making the point to emphasize that we have a higher bar on seed. We want to do seed investing where we can actually work with the company, help shape business model, strategy, whatever it is, so that we can ultimately help convert that into a Series A stage investing. That's what I meant by batting 1,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have this, criteria on the front end. What about the back end? What are you looking for in companies in terms of the exit strategy? You're trying to grow the next Google. You're trying to grow, $100 million company. What's the?
Yeah, to be very honest, right? Again, what has taught us in 15 plus years with businesses, it's really impossible to predict these startups. It's impossible to predict what's going to turn out to be a Google and what doesn't. So the focus completely is around what does it take to build companies to get to some sort of self-sustaining type of scale. What does it take to get companies to call it mid-double-digit kind of revenues? And good things just naturally happen to companies that just get to those kind of scale. Companies that get to 20, 30, 40, $50 million of revenues will continue to grow on, and maybe they'll go public, maybe they'll get to be the next Google, maybe they'll show such impressive growth and show some real strategic value that some interesting acquirer will come in and pay a handsome premium for it. Because good things naturally happen to these companies. So what I would urge everybody to think about it is not to almost, it's important to think about exits. Think about playing the chess game right, but I think it's just much more important to just really think about, does it have the ingredients to get to escape velocity, to be some sort of a company that get to sort of, mid double-digit sort of revenues. And that would be the philosophy we subscribe to. Yes?
What would be the mode for investment in a typical company that you guys invest
In what kind of financial instruments we use?
Yeah, or just general, if you were to group them into size of investment and how much you invest in them, what's the mode for that number? Like $100,000?
A typical model of investing, I briefly mentioned this, is to invest quarter to half and then be flexible along the way for seed stage investing companies. If the seed company takes $750, so be it, or $1 million, so be it. And then for a Series A company, invest $2 to $4 million the first time you invest in the company. But be full lifecycle investors, which means the companies will require a B and a C and a D or whatever it is. So be prepared to invest along the way until a company gets to promised land of some kind, right? Which means invest 6 to 8 over the life of a company. Maybe have to be flexible to 10 plus in instances as possible. We have a $110 million fund, you can go up to 15% of the fund in a company, but now you're getting into, oh my God, I'm incredibly stressed, and most of these everyday stress levels. So if we think of it as 6 to 8 typically per company over its life cycle is the model. Yes?
So this question probably demonstrates my ignorance about how venture capital is.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask a little bit about the sourcing of your money. You said, for example, that you like to have angels come in and validate the investments that you make. Do you solicit investments from angels, or is it just similar? So is there sort of like an atmosphere of venture capitalists that know each other, they have a network of angels?
No. We don't solicit money from angels at all. We don't look to angels for validation at all. Okay. So I must have misstated this. So let me try to unthink what question. I think I hear 2 questions to that. So let me tell you both of those. First is who gives us money, right? It's not my personal checkbook. So venture is, our investors are large public pension systems, university endowments, foundations, and so on. Large family offices. So these are people who think about their own asset allocation and they want to invest in stocks, in bonds, in emerging market equities, and private equity in general. And within that, they invest in venture capital. And so our investors are long-term patient investors who want to get meaningful returns, and they believe venture with its high risk, high return is good asset diversification for them. So we've got 2 of the top 10 public pension funds in the country are investors in our fund. And it's healthy because that's the kind of composition of investors you want for building long-term franchise. And I hope to be in this business 20, 25 years from today with fund number 7, 8, 9, 10, or whatever it is in Texas, and still doing this. So that's the aspirational goal with which we came to start Live Open Partners. That there was enough opportunity here, and we can see us doing this for the next 20, 25, 30 years or so. Question 2 is, I talked about how do you get coastal money to come and invest in these things? Is there an atmosphere of venture guys and network and so on? So again, being 15 plus years in this business, there is a long history of bringing coastal investors to come in to invest with us during our 10 years at Austin Ventures. One of the most respected firms, Sequoia Capital, has come and invested 4 times just with the 3 of us in different companies with us. Firms like Norvest, Redpoint, NEA have all been co-investors amongst us partners. So we just have had a long history of relationships with individual partners in all these funds. So when we came out to start Live Oak, immediately the same Rolodex is active again. So we're able to pick up the phone and call the handful of 20 firms, let's say, which are the most active firms in the nationwide basis, and say, this is a pipeline of interesting things in the list of portfolio. I think this would raise money in 6 months' time, 9 months' time, 12 months' time, and you ought to try to intersect at different places. That's how there was a feeding frenzy with this Houston company, because we made this half a dozen calls and they were all showed up given the traction the company had for them to invest in that company.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is there like a reverse flow to the coast with the number of companies that are based in San Francisco or New York or other areas that have satellite offices here for the talent? Do you get approached to participate in the fund just by the nature of them having an engineering office here?
Yeah, there are always companies in the Bay Area who are also soliciting our capital. And we always, whenever we get, probably get once a week, there'll be a company reaching out to us, and we always look around the table and say, the company in California that's reaching out to us to invest in them, why are we so lucky? You know, you walk in Sandal Road, you throw a rock up into the sky and it comes down and hit a venture capitalist. Right? There's such a large number of guys with funds and angels running around. Those ought to raise capital from those local sources. So always very skeptical of writing checks in those parts where there is plenty of supply of capital. Right? So this fund is maniacally focused on the thesis that there is a tremendous amount of talent and opportunity here in this market. So let's not even bother writing a single penny of investment outside this market, right? Because why bother when if Texas is the most capital constrained, supply rich market in the country, Austin in particular, let's just focus this market. That's our core thesis, why we came out with this. Yes?
So to follow up that, what would be the argument to start a company between here and Silicon Valley? What would be the argument to start it here rather than there where there's capital much easier available?
No doubt about it. You have a lot more capital available in California than here. You have probably 20x more capital available there. But along with that, the issue, of course, is that you have a much thinner talent pool available there, unless you're part of some old boys network where you're one of the early guys in, let's say, Facebook or Google, for example, and had access to talent. It's definitely tough to hire there compared to hiring here. For all the right demographic reasons, we see a tremendous influx of talent from the West Coast, particularly to Austin, given the opportunity set, cost of living, etc. So I would say it's a if you had the wherewithal and had a dense network there, and it was easy to uproot and go start a company in the Bay Area, there's more capital there. I would, but we've repeatedly seen people who have gone from here, tested out the Y Combinator class in the Bay Area, and despite the access to capital available there, have just come back here to really start their companies in Austin for all the structural reasons and benefits of Austin has to offer. And let me say that, and I think finally, as again, 15 plus years of perspective here, they're finally really breaking through the critical mass of talent across all functions, from front end, back end, full stack, technical talent, marketing talent, data science talent, exec talent, and now supply of capital. There's enough of a critical mass in this ecosystem available to really have an impact, and where there should not be a meaningful disadvantage doing this in Austin compared to the Bay Area anymore. There's a question back. Okay.
I was just going to ask if you think that, that's probably obviously true, but the talent part is a more important cog than the capital part? Or, is it going to be, when you look at these drivers, is it more about, you're trying to get the capital, but, I'm raising the money. Is it more about getting that good talent on board first, or getting the capital on board first, or is it sort of we're chasing each other kind of thing?
It's chasing each other is the right part to think about it, right? See, companies that raise capital initially it's much more about the core team, right? You're making a bet on the small single-digit number of people, who, at least for us, right? Maybe as you get to a later stage, you invest based on more financial metrics and traction metrics and things like that. When we invest in a company, it's much, even if they have early revenues, it's completely around the notion of it's number one, number two, number three, it's the people bets, right? Yeah. So we think of, are these the people we would like to bet on? Why do they have this insight they have? Is where it starts. So you're able to attract capital from the handful of us in this market. Then, of course, you have the wherewithal to go raise more, attract more talent here and go do that. Yes?
So I have a follow-up kind of to his question. Do you have any experience or have you seen companies that grow or they get capital and grow too fast, or do you have any feedback on growth rates as far as hiring new talent?
Yeah, it's always this delicate balance, right? You feel, companies, it's almost the way I think of this is like let me see this analogy. It's like a Lewis and Clark expedition. You come up, you want to take the next hill, you come to the next hill, and you say, oh my God, there's a bigger hill. And you climb the next hill and climb the next hill and so on. So companies look to set what is the next immediate inflection point, milestone you want to get to. And you're funded to take that big milestone of some kind. So the tension always is managing burn so that you don't get to 80% of the way to the summit because the money runs out. And that's where savvy entrepreneurs with hopefully savvy investors, board members, together will help think about what the approach is to be able to not spend too much, not spend too little, so that you can go get to the inflection point with the capital on hand and with some change to spend. Once you get to that inflection point, next you look to raise a bunch more capital, right, and take the next bigger hill. And now you're willing to tolerate more spend along the way, but you're constantly balancing achieving higher order objectives, climbing higher mountains, and managing a delicate balance between not underinvesting, and certainly not overinvesting. Because the worst thing that happens is you raise a bunch of money and then you get to halfway across the desert, with mixing metaphors here, without having made the right kind of progress. And that is the critical balance in managing growth in a good situation, is that tension between over-investing, glasses half full, glasses half empty, read off the tea leaves, and making progress.
If you give me a rough percentage of people you invest in who fail, and what side of the spectrum they fall on, either they didn't grow fast enough, or they weren't able to grow fast enough, or they didn't meet that hill.
I would say the larger number, if you take a statistical, if you get a percentage, I'm sure there are more people who have failed for not being able to come up with a market opportunity for a playbook, right? In the time on the money that they had is likely the reason.
So it's not a technical. So it's really not a technical limitation.
Oh, it's sometimes a technical limitation because you could never get technology to converge on working on a product. So you have a lot of systems companies. These days you have less number of technology-centric companies. You've got more execution-centric companies going off of things today. But often the insight the entrepreneur has, the investors have about that product, that service has got real market need, might be off, and the teams haven't quite evolved rapidly enough to go grab the right market opportunity. That's the most common failure pattern in companies. Yes, in the back.
You mentioned talent and you mentioned capital, but you also, about a successful company, need strong leadership, and you need support for that leadership from mentors in the team. What degree do you think Austin
In general, look, we believe it's completely fine to back first-time entrepreneurs. There's a lot of great first-time entrepreneurs who grow into being great CEOs and learn how to be leaders. Maybe they've never been CEOs of a mighty company before, and they have a really good insight on a certain product, certain problem, certain insight in the industry, and they're able to grow to be great leaders. Yes, there should be a good support network comprising of their board members, peer group of CEOs they can go to, or maybe their early days, maybe they get mentored to think about problems along the ways. So I think we don't subscribe to the philosophy that, oh my God, you got to have done once before for us to back somebody. Because we repeatedly see, I think, more than half the companies in the portfolio are, well more than half are first-time CEOs that we have backed. I think the support system that I talk about, not about mentoring people, you require a critical mass of competent lawyers, competent accountants, outsourced marketing, outsourced finance, outsourced HR, outsourced recruiting resources. I think we totally have the ecosystem in plenty here in Austin to be able to get by with outsourcing a lot of these things to specialists to do that. Did that answer your question? Or?
I suppose yes.
Okay. Anything else? Yes.
I have heard that if you have a couple of people and a good idea, maybe you've iterated on a product a little bit, maybe you have some traction. If you're out raising money for a seed round, you need to raise $750,000. Like, you need to raise some specific amount of money. Do you subscribe to that belief, or is every startup a beautiful and unique snowflake, or any insight on seed rounds?
See, to me, it's completely arbitrary to think about what the number is. You should raise the amount of money and spare to be able to get to the next inflection point. So let me take what we believe is the difference between a seed stage company and a Series A company, because that will be, hopefully will be constructive. A seed stage company is couple, three guys with some excellent team if they can, cobble together, have an insight, have more than insight, have some real domain experience they can call upon as to why they have the insight, ideally, are able to articulate what the insight is, can talk about, hey, I've done some early checking, it's worthwhile for me to quit my past job to go do this. Trust me if I can start to get some traction on this idea, but it's completely in the slideware, trust me basis, and maybe I can I'm working on a POC, I'm working on a couple of early lighthouse customers to get some traction. That's seed stage. There is no real tangible evidence yet of existence or tangible evidence or tangible proof of existence of a market opportunity. Fast forward, they take $250K, $500K, $750K, $1.2 million, whatever it is. Not too much, not the amount you're in the $1.x million. You're definitely growing a little too long, too tall to be in a seed stage opportunity. The Series A is characterized by you have some concrete evidence that customers do like this product, right? Maybe it is less than depending on the nature of the play. If you're doing a $50K to $100K, B2B software deal, for example. Let's pick a simple example. You have enough examples of, you have less than a handful of examples, 2, 3, 4 examples of some lighthouse customers liking the product, can articulate back that they are getting some benefits out of it, and so there is evidence of dogs eating the dog food in terms of that you have a product or service that's getting some level of traction in the market. Again, some level is in less than a handful of traction, instances of traction. So you can point to that and say, go to a venture guy and say, hey, give me a couple $1 million now. I've got evidence of traction. Now let's take a couple $1 million to use it for a Series A, 2 to 4, and hire a team and further develop the product, further develop on sales and marketing expertise, so that at the end of that money, we have really perfected a playbook on this is where our hunting grounds are for this product. This is what a product truly looks like. And we can get some repeat velocity of what customer traction look like. So you've gone from in that 50 to 100K sale point example, you've gone from less than a handful to more than a 2 hands full-ish engagement activity. Is what you've got. Hopefully that looks like $1 million plus, a couple $1 million annual recurring revenue of some kind. So that would denote success, which will put you up nicely for a Series B, where then you will tell the story of, I now have the playbook, I know who I'm selling to, all now we need is to put fuel on the fire to be able to really go hire a sales force across the country to now grow this nicely. So that's let's not get carried away by what people call as seeds and Series A's and so on. So seed, you are underwriting, will there be any interest? You've seen some interest. Series A, you're underwriting the risk that can the interest be replicated, or it's just a complete flash in the pan, couple 3 one-offs. And then you're just underwriting that you can scale that handsomely in the Series B round of financing. Make sense?
Cool, more than answered, thank you.
Okay. What else? Yes, the back.
So what typically, when people come into a pitch, what are you looking for? What mistakes do they typically make? What are they missing that you would like people to have when they come to you?
Pitches come in, let me tell you broadly, pitches come in dramatically different shapes and sizes, like in terms of how people pitch and how things are. We backed a guy who had a collection of Word documents. He pulled out one after the other to tell a story, and we very Socratically figured out that, wow, this is pretty interesting, and we ended up investing in the guy, because he was a special guy. And other instances, people, I think let me talk about, I think the most important things that have caught our imagination the most are pitches where, again, let's go back to my earlier thesis, right? It's very much a people investing business. What does it mean? It's not about finding the guy, finding Zuckerberg to go back him on his next gig if he ever wants to do a startup again. It's really about backing people who have a certain domain, have a certain experience set, and based on the experience set, that team collectively is able to articulate where the world is going in their industry, their little industry, and why they have a certain insight on where the market is going, what new service that market requires, and why do they have an insight, and how do they think they're going to be able to meet that solution. So I think it's really, at the earliest of stages, it's really all about articulating that. It's their journey that has brought them to that insight is the most important thing. So we'd love to just talk about, team and their insight and what brought them to the problem is number one. And then why they, reasonably, I wouldn't say uniquely qualified, which means you're one in the world now, why they are qualified to have the insight, have the hypothesis they have about that. Second positive trait of a pitching idea to us is people are very hypothesis driven, in the sense that we all know that very little money has gone to that. You don't expect them to have done magic with it by having lots of customers, lots of revenues. Certainly is not possible. But at least have a hypothesis on who is your target customer. What does a target customer look like where they have this pain that you're describing? I have a hypothesis for for this sweet spot customer that you hypothesize, what would they pay for a product like this, right? What would usage look like for this? So be as hypothesis driven on you believe this thing should play out in a certain fashion as to why you can go build up a company like this. And the third distinctive trait I would tell you is people have a good insight into, are very self-actualized in terms of why are they raising a certain amount of money and what is the definition of this little hill I talked about that they're trying to take. What do they believe they need to accomplish in that hill, and being able to vividly, articulately talk about that journey to what the hill looks like and what the challenges, risks they see along the way to getting there. And so that would just come across as being incredibly self-actualized, insightful there. So I think those are, I'm just I'm living this, I think those are the three distinctive traits I typically see when we when we fall in love with a company. Yes?
What about people who want to go completely, what seems like outside of the industry they're already in? Have you backed anybody who says, I have this insight over here, but it's not really what I've been doing?
So I say people come out of industry to industry and have a dramatically new, powerful insight to things is absolutely possible. So you should not take that lightly, that level of a transition. But we have just seen the pattern on a volume basis. The statistics are very much against that being successful. Because there are so many people who have spent all their lives in, let's take an example, spent all their lives in mobile gaming, right? And suddenly they wake up one morning and say, oh, this healthcare industry is a $1 trillion opportunity. Let's write a pitch to go tackle a problem, right? And the healthcare industry, each industry's got oodles of complexity in it. So there have been a lot of examples of people making this left shift, feeling like grass on the other side, and not knowing what they don't know about the industry. And there have been a lot of, there have been more number of people who failed, an order of magnitude greater number of people who failed making the switch than the one-offs that come out doing that. So the one-offs that come out doing that just require demonstration of traction, demonstration of progress as a proxy to overcome the statistical bias that might exist about they not having the right insight. You just got to make more progress because you don't get the natural points for just having a bunch of insight around that. There was a question here.
Yeah, how do you find entrepreneurs, or how do entrepreneurs find you?
Well, guess why am I here? So, thank you. I'm at Krishna at liveoakvp.com. People have emailed me. People have sent me, tweeted to me on a direct message at Krishna Srini. So,
well, I mean, there's more to my question than that. I've spoken to VCs who say that they have never invested in a plan that someone has emailed, and that you have to have some sort of a introduction or a better relationship or you can't just be a random guy walking up to you on the street and get anywhere. So how does one go about?
I strongly disagree with anybody who characterizes that way. But I'm not saying it just because I feel good saying that. This company called CS Disco in the portfolio, which I told you in Houston, it's a wickedly growing portfolio company, growing like a weed. This was emailed to plans at liveovp.com. It was not introduced to us, and we look at everything that comes to plans at liveovp. Maybe we are, at least we don't subscribe to the philosophy. So there are some venture guys, I'm sure, who believe you have to be introduced, or come on, what kind of a person doesn't get introduced? Well, by somebody else. Well, a lot of serious entrepreneurs are busy building their own companies. So they just don't want to go down the path of trying to figure out the game of who do I get interaction from A to B to C to get there. Completely understand that. So at least we believe it's completely fine for people to reach out directly to us individually. So the reason I said my email address is because, clearly I am as eager to meet entrepreneurs as much as entrepreneurs are eager to meet us. And that's a cultural thing for us. So hope that answers the question. Thank you. Yes.
Do you guys do anything with UT is here in town, it's a great school, there's St. Edward's, there's multiple universities in town. Do you have any outreach or relationship with those schools in order to find recruiting for any portfolio companies or find?
Yeah, I think doing the recruiting in the portfolios, and I think we're trying to launch a program with other venture funds in town to get interns to come and work on our portfolio companies for the summer, and hopefully that'll become long-term employment opportunities. UT's got to work well because that's got to be a phenomenal pipeline of smart guys who graduate from there and come and work in companies here. So UT's got to work, and I have the greatest respect for UT. I got my master's degree in the engineering school at UT. So being a Longhorn myself, I definitely want that to work. But I think it's been the pipeline of activity out directly out of UT, our Stanford, has not quite materialized, at least for us yet. So we do spend a lot of time across the board, UT events, of course, events around Longhorn, accelerators and stuff like that. Always looking for the next smart guy to come out of there. But so there's no bias against it, we just haven't done that thing yet. Yes.
I heard that the national average of founder ownership after all the investment rounds are over is around 10%. What's your average, or the average here in Texas?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think the way one ought to view this is founders ought to own enough to feel motivated to come back to work. That's the philosophy. So I think it's very hard to Zuckerberg took Facebook public, and Brendan Page took Google public with having control over the company post-public, right? So it's completely a function of supply and demand, right? On one side it is founders can't own, let me broadly call it, management team cannot own too little. If they own too little, they won't feel motivated to come to work. On the other side, if the company is a rocket ship taking off like gangbusters, like a Facebook or a Google, the management team gets to set their own terms on how much they own, what kind of control provisions they want in the company. So those are the two ends of the spectrum on how these things, that's the way I would approach it. There's no formula on how much should people ought to own and what they ought not to own is not how we approach the situation.
Yeah, but there are averages or something.
But to be honest, those are, I don't know what they are, and B, I don't even have a spreadsheet that says, let's compare our 8 companies and find out, let's spit out an average. We don't think like that. It's just becomes very individual, situation specific in terms of what that situation shakes out at the end, to be honest. Yes?
So probably need to cut short and like 3 more questions or so. But I had a question around kind of the technical side of things. You've talked a little bit about how Austin firms are sort of characterized a little differently than some of the West Coast firms. What industries do you think are exciting, upcoming? What should people be looking at if they're, obviously look into what you're good at, right? But I think on the West Coast, everything's about watches right now. Like, what should Austinites be? What kinds of things do you think are big here?
It's a great question. If you, again, hit a student of history here, if you go back to trace 25 years of Austin's innovation, you repeatedly have seen Austin has excelled. I'm sure there'll be other areas that come up in the future. Historically, Austin has really excelled as a picks and shovels type of a place, which means these are enablers of consumer-facing businesses. Everything from systems management layer to the basic data management layer. Those are areas in terms of data mining-esque nature. So they're all enabler problems have been, or selling to businesses, are areas, B2B software, enterprise software are areas which Austin historically has just absolutely excelled. So you can definitely find plentiful opportunity doing that kind of stuff up and down the ranks of companies, either to be core founder, core mover, founder of a company, catalyst, or down, being one of the technical contributors. We're definitely seeing early traction in the consumer space, especially as consumer businesses become more data-rich, data-heavy kind of businesses, and so on. So I'm sure there are a lot of people in the room working on consumer-facing businesses, and those are, picking up momentum. We don't have as much of a history, a long-term history of success yet in this market, but it'll only be a matter of time. You just got to have enough number of those try, experiment, fail before something breaks out. You need a lot more consumer insights available in this market. Anything else? Yes. Three questions.
Okay. Just my question, you personally, do you see ideas from people where the idea is good, but they don't have the right team to do it? Like, do you have a lot of ideas in your head that you're wishing people would come to you with that you want to back?
Look, venture guys, if I had a great idea, I should be quitting my job and going and doing that. I am not I have a $1 billion idea that is just bursting out of my head. I just could find the guy to go do that. Don't trust the idea, I tell you, right? Simply because, again, look at the pattern. I don't talk to customers on a daily basis. My domain expertise is, being a venture guy, right? So I don't talk to customers on a daily basis. I don't live and breathe a certain industry and a certain perspective based on that. I definitely see a lot of opportunities here and there, but would they be the world-class opportunities for somebody to go see something, to have that level of precise insight? No, I would not have that. But we definitely think about people coming with great ideas, but average teams, and you really agonize about that, in terms of, it's a great insight, these guys don't have a history of execution. Would you still risk a bet on this great idea with an average team and try to, hopefully we can process up to pick up something great? But in general, the bias is around backing great teams with decent ideas, because great people will figure out a way to get this done.
So, related question: you have to be a domain expert or become at least enough of an expert to evaluate this. How do you do that? I mean, personally, how do you get up to speed on something new when it comes along?
I'm not an expert. I'm boards of 5 companies now in the current fund. One of them is a CRM company, one of them is a litigation, e-discovery platform company, one is a networking appliance play, one is a content marketing company, and one is a container management for Docker. Look, if I told you I was an expert in those 5 areas, I'd be obviously lying. So I really rely on great experts all around us. I'm looking at a marketing software company. I've got 6 to 8 CMOs from $50 million companies to a $5 million business who are helping really diligence for us to help provide us the perspective on, is that insight spot on or valid? So I think what we are not segment experts, but we absolutely have a very highly good calibrated view on who the true experts are to help us out with diligence and providing insight. So I can constantly refer my company, after we invest in them too, I'm an extended business development function for them, constantly introducing them to relevant people in the industry, relevant talent across the spectrum up and down is something which we constantly keep doing. So I think that's an important distinction, So but the goodness is, I've met with 5,000 companies in a 15-year career probably, been on 25 plus boards maybe. So seeing enough patterns of, some of these things I'm talking about, if there is a B2B software company, have a strong perspective on how they scale, how they grow, how does engineering function work, how does marketing function work, what are mistakes in a CRM company could make as it makes its voyage without knowing the nitty-gritty details of how do you go implement a contextual care function, right? So I think it's most significantly more pattern matching because that's what we do day to day on a day-to-day basis. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, related question to the one about the idea versus the team, or anything that you see. When you see something where there's, do you ever just tell somebody no, or do you at least give us guidance? Or,
It's one of the saddest and hardest things about this business, right? You've got people who quit their jobs, this is their life, they come and pitch us, hoping that this is the way they get to accelerate, and you got to call the guy and not just say no, because you at least want to be somewhat constructive, as constructive as possible. And so I think we strive hard, or at least we tell ourselves that we always must strive hard to provide some constructive feedback as to what aspect of the model, the idea, do we not believe yet? Hopefully, if that's very foggy for us, and sometimes we can dream along with the entrepreneur and cut through the fog and see the end point, and sometimes we're just skeptics and don't believe there is an interesting company there, and we try to be as clear as possible on what element of the story is the one that is the foggiest for us, that we cannot have excitement amongst us. I think we tell ourselves to call back every single entrepreneur. Either we give them constructive feedback in a meeting as to why it is not moving forward, as to what aspect of it, or if that is not clear, we call back and tell people. In fact, our internal deal tracking mechanism says we use Salesforce to track all our opportunities that come in. We can't move an opportunity out of our review sheet unless we tell the rest of the gang that, yes, I've called the person to pass on it. It doesn't come off the sheet for us. That's how we internally police ourselves on falling into bad practices that venture guys are notoriously known for. You go and talk to them, and then it goes into the black abyss and you hear nothing about it. We try to avoid those kind of bad practices. I'm sure we have failed. I'm sure we have not called back some people, and if anybody is here in the audience, sincere apologies, but we try to avoid that. One hand going up there. Should we take that or not?
Yeah, we can do it. I think we can do one.
Okay, last one.
Yeah.
Which are you afraid of more, a missed opportunity or a bad investment?
Well, the bad investment causes many, many years of agony. Missed opportunity, I don't know. This is a complete share of fear versus greed, right? If I was sitting there and somebody pitched Google to me and I missed it and didn't think, oh, search is too crowded and Alta Vista will take over the world and so on. Excite will take over the world, or whatever it was, right? I would feel like a schmuck if I post where Google ended up. But this is a very, one side, very difficult business, right? We pass on 98% of the companies we meet, and so it's easy to pass on something. It's easier to pass on something than have the conviction to say that's what is exciting and so on. But if you make a bad investment, you're constantly trying to make it work, right? We are absolutely aligned with the entrepreneur on we want to make this work. And because we want to bat at 1,000, we want to make that company grow up to be president, and we just try hard, work hard to try to make that happen. And you're losing money for investors, which is very agonizing. Which is these are monies of people's pension funds, their endowments, and so on. So it's a big deal, and so it's preferably neither happens in the world of wishful thinking. Good. So any more? I'll be around for some more time, and you all want to talk about company-specific stuff. We chat briefly, or as I said, send me an email. Happy to meet and chat more. Thank you.
We'll take like 5 minutes or so, run to the restroom, grab more beer, water, sandwiches. Anthony Skopatz is going to give a talk on lunch, I think it's pronounced. So. Yeah. Probably could have gone. Yeah.
It looks like a Mac.
Yeah.
It looks like a Mac. It's not like a Mac. I mean, it can, but yeah. Alright, so I don't have that one. I agonize about
Great job posting. It's kind of weird.
Right now, because we just talked about it.
Yeah, I walked down from 6 Light. Are you guys looking for something else to give a short time?
Yeah, I think it's going to like 15 minutes or so. So I think we could probably fit in.
I mean, if you don't have time, like I didn't really prepare very much. I just spent some.
Let me know. So yeah, I mean, I'll look it up if we got the 30 or 40.
Otherwise, next time. Yeah, lightning. That's exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, great.
I'm Joe.
Joe?
Nice to meet you, Jeremy. So how are you?
So I work with, I don't work on the other.
Yeah, actually, I saw that. That is a bit more applicable to what we do. Yeah, that would be a lot more applicable to an entrepreneur, like all land-based cloud.
Yeah, what do you use?
So we, like, for what? Well, right now, the majority of our web app is really PHP, but we're looking at migrating, building an API in the back end, and migrating a lot of the functionality and all the functionality onto my front back end. We're not quite sure what we're going to use. I played Flask. I mean, we use Python for everything. It's just kind of the talk about. It's about WebSockets based. It's always up there. And basically push information and, get push notifications from all of our devices and just constantly that's built into WebSockets. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So the back end of that uses Twisted as a driver and Autobahn to handle WebSocket communication. Yeah. I didn't leverage much of a lot of downloads I could have, but Kevin. You're gonna try to get the mic on track. I could try. I move my hands though, so probably. Is there like a that would be best. Probably be like 0. You ever heard of a color sensor? Yeah. It's like
It's like a camera that just reduces everything it sees so they're that's wired for radio. And then you can like yeah, so yeah, calibrated power. Yeah, it's just a way what are you going to try to do what's your sign? Sorry. I've had people. Oh, you're still just starting. So, how do you guys compare this? I just want to angle it a bit more. I've never had yeah, it feels like oh my God.
What they were trying to do is themselves. They did online usage. So like, the thing is like, hey, it's kind of like, yeah, like your phone bill.
I know, right?
Pretty soon you're going to be ready to and it's that's the interesting because of that, so it takes all the bit off the top of the transaction. I don't remember exactly what they did. So like, my months, I would normally do a at 13 developers, one QA. That's the I'm not there anymore. For real. Yeah, QA teams all play everything. And we're actually right now we're looking for people. Yeah, unfortunately, we're looking for experience here to come in and kind of grow as like experience. So actually, where I'm at right now, I'm actually I'm not it's a automated test framework, and you can plug in libraries like this.
I know the sandwiches are delicious.
That's about what I'm about this
Hey everybody. Anthony here. Anthony is going to be giving a talk on conch. And I'm sorry, I was not thinking earlier. I know that there are a couple people who would like to give like maybe a 5-minute lightning talk or so. I think we might have room for one more of those. And if you don't mind, try not to recruit horn out on Ahiji's territory tonight. Anyway, I'll hand it over to Anthony, who will talk, and then we'll go over to Joe and then Chris.
I'm not going to use the mic.
I'm not going to use the mic. It's fine.
So, everybody ready to take a little break, do some Python maybe? Okay. So, I'm here to talk to you tonight about conch, which is this shell that I wrote. I just released it on Monday. This was a side project, sort of a stress reliever. I have this coworker at work who I really don't like, so I sit at work all day not liking him, and then go home. I'm remote, so I would just stay where I was and work on Conch. So yeah, let's dive in. So what is Conch? It's got all these features. It's supposed to be a terminal that you, or a shell in a shell language coupled with a command prompt that you use on a daily basis, and it really aims to try to solve a lot of the problems that Bash has, because Bash has like a million problems. And these are really made clear to me when I was writing this book and we taught everything about Bash. And then I realized we got through this entire like 40-page section on Bash and we never covered if statements because no one remembers them. We didn't even touch on loops because no one remembers them. You know, tokenization, it's out of there. No one cares. No one knows what an array is. It's awful. So we can do better, and you know we can, and that's what Conch is. So. So who has the Conch? I do. This is my lightning talk. But actually everybody else does too, because it's BSD licensed, it's up there in GitHub, you can go and find it. And you know, there's actually been a lot of feedback over the past few days, so it's continuing to get better, which is awesome. So why did I program Conch? And you know, the joke is that so people would stop making fun of me for writing my own text editor, which I did last year at about this time. But it really was this Bash issue and these other things. And you know, someone made a post that got floated to the top of Hacker News. Some of you probably saw it, about like write your own little shell in C. And I thought that's an awful idea, but because it's in C, not because it's an awful idea to write your own shell. So let's do a little demo and dive in. All right. So I don't have a mirrored screen, so this is going to be fun. Is that big enough? Is that big enough? Yeah, all right. So what do you want to do with a shell? You like want to do LS, right? Like that's something you want to do. This is a language that's based on Python, and then it has these Bash isms like kind of merged in into the language. So you get all this other stuff. So anything you can do in Python, you can do here, plus some more. So what else do you want to do in a shell, right? Like you might want to add numbers. Oops. That's a little off to the side, so let's bump up that number size maybe. Right, so that you can do anything that you really would do in Python, including, and then all the things that you might do in a shell, like, you know, env, what is it, sort, I do unique, etc. And then that just dumps out like it would in the normal shell. So you have the piping syntax, you have redirection to files, you have background processes, you have all that fun stuff. One of the cool things about this is that you can also write your own little processes as Python callables, and then you can pipe those together with other commands as well. And that works like 100% natively. So here, you know, tab completion works too. So I've got a couple of these loaded in. So here's a hello one. We can talk about the function signature here, but it's just, it just takes an argument list, optionally takes standard in, and then it can return a string which is standard out, a tuple of standard out and standard error, or just none. And anything, if you're in what I call captured mode, then anything that you print will also be captured as well. Using any normal writing to standard out and standard error. So here's your little hello function. You can then call it like a command, pipe it through cat for some reason if you really wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but that's the example that one of the reporters was like, oops, nope, didn't want those yet. So let's do another one. This works both ways, right? So here, we're going to be piping something in through standard in, and then it's going to be, we've got this other syntax here that I talked about, so we could do, you know, cat, or not cat, sorry, hello, oops, not hello world, hello woot, and then you get the results there, or you could do, you know, whatever, it just works 100%, it's kind of cool, so, I don't know, echo.
LS.
Echo LS?
No, just LS.
Oh, I showed that at the beginning. You want to see that?
Through Woot.
Oh, through Woot. Okay, I can do that. LS Woot. Should be up here at the top, right? Yep, there it is. Yeah, so I mean, it's there.
Does it have like in-person programs at all?
So I might touch on that later. So this doesn't use curses, but I was thinking about going through Erwid, if we wanted to. Batch variables are nice, and they're typed, so anything that like is a path is actually like a real list of directories, which is kind of fun. And I would claim like totally necessary for doing those things. You can do this. You can do executed lookup. That's another thing that you could do of environment variables. So you could say something like, x plus er, and then that gets you, your username, etc. So, and that can be fully nested, right? This is like a real language and everything. It gets, all right, we'll talk about that in a moment. What are the other, there's multi-line input, so that's kind of fun. So if true, the normal is just dots. I have the nice fun ones, but and that'll go ahead and execute again. So I guess the one is being cut off there. I apologize on the screen. Okay, you can see it? Okay, yeah, sorry, it's like from this perspective, it doesn't. What else is cool that you guys want to see? Oh yeah, here's the other thing. Backticks are regular expression file name globs. So if you want to glob by regular expression, you can do that with backticks. So here's a somewhat contrived example. Whoops. So that's not what I wanted. So if I do ls backtick conch slash w plus ic, oops, pipe or ci dot star and backtick, you'll get all the file names that have an IC or CI in them. And that works in both Python and subprocess mode. So that's like a feature that I've wanted in the shell forever, and finally now have it. Don't ask me why I wanted that in the shell forever, but it's like, it was deep there in my brain. So yeah, that's another thing. History, aliasing, there's all this other like fun stuff that we can get into. Or since I'm probably like way over time on the demo, I can go back and start to talk about how all of this works, because you're all interested. So this has your sort of traditional language phases, right? I built in Ply initially to start out a full Python 3 parser or lexer and parser, and then started extending it with these bashisms. I should show that. Oh, that's the thing that I forgot to show you. So I forgot to show you tab completion. It uses Bash's tab completion. So any tab completion that's in Bash, you get for free here, right? So you can do crazy things like, git commit dash, or not commit. Let's do push, set upstream, origin, master or whatever, and it just works. And that works for all functions. That was super annoying and tricky to figure out, but it's there and it's useful. So, okay. So how does this work? Sorry, small digression. You have this. It uses the Ply to parse and lex. What we do is you build a Python abstract syntax tree. We do a small amount of sneaky syntax tree transformation on that afterwards. And I'll show you why in a moment. And then it just uses the normal Python tools to compile and execute the code. So you don't really have to worry about anything. The meaty bit is me in the first 3 bullets. So the lexer is trickier than you might think, because in sub-process mode, it's very whitespace sensitive inside of your expressions, and in Python it's not. So you have to account for that. You have to know which mode you're in. not super tricky, but annoying, since it's kind of these two different languages. You build this Python AST. We then use exec and eval on that. And anything that is a language extension, like this regular expression, path name globbing, or using subprocess to make these process calls, or exit, or cd, or any of those things, those all get shoved to functions that we push into built-in. So the parser actually knows which functions to call, and then goes and calls them. And then we do this like syntax tree transformation. So because this is an ambiguous phrase, this ls minus l, what we do is we say, we're going to parse everything in Python mode, and then we're going to check, is ls a variable name that I know about in Python? Is it in the Python context? And we only check that leftmost name. And if it isn't, then we'll attempt to parse it in subprocess mode by wrapping it in this operator, this $, square brackets, which is our uncaptured. Square brackets are kind of like pipes. So, and if that works, then we'll keep the line in subprocess or in the square brackets. If we can't parse it that way, we'll leave it in Python mode and forget about it, and assume that you knew what you were doing or you made a mistake and you want the trace back. And you can totally avoid it. I guess this goes off screen a bit, but this is completely avoidable if you just always want to wrap your lines in the captured subprocess and the uncaptured subprocess syntax. But this is exactly what I was trying to avoid. This is what IPython does, right? They make you type something to run a subprocess, and that is like not very usable as a shell. That's super frustrating to do every day. I've tried it, so all day, every day. And then we just use compile and exec. So you can install it. There's a bunch of different ways. Bugs are getting fixed left and right, and the more people hammer on this, the better. So hopefully you'll be bash free, like I know I am, very soon. So thanks.
Joe. Where's Joe? There you are. Okay. Oh, you can repeat. Huh? You're wearing an YouTube shirt.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. Is that the way that works?
Yeah.
So how do I plug my computer?
Do you?
This
Do you want to get on the Sure. Capital factory, it's keep Austin packing. Keep Austin. That works. You should be able to verify this. We are. I have no idea. Anybody know which room this is for the AirPlay display? Nobody's done it? All right, cool. Somebody's gonna get to see it. Other rooms will get to see it.
That didn't work.
Co-working room? Co-working room.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's the brand new
Ta-da, it works. All right, cool.
Thanks.
So I didn't really, this is rough and it's high level, so enjoy. Let's see here, it's full screen. You guys kind of see that? So basically what we've made at IHG is a two-way communications channel using WebSockets. The reason we built it was because our old community. Yeah. So let's try this. Can everybody hear me? So the reason we built this was because of the fact that our old communication channel, it does not scale. We hit about 3,000 users, concurrent users, and it's bad. Memory spikes constantly, memory leaks. It's in Java, so kind of expected. So I built this instead. And instead of long polling, it uses WebSockets, which is basically the correct way to do long polling. I don't know a lot about what long polling is, I just use it. So if I'm wrong about something, please tell me. Basically, our clients go out and connect to the server constantly and create a communications channel between the server and the client that's relatively persistent. They drop off and come back on about every, I want to say 24 hours or so. Everybody kind of cycles through. I'm constantly getting drop-offs. Right now we've got about 3,000 concurrent users. It's been tested for 10,000 concurrent users. And even at 10,000 concurrent users, there's barely a spike in load. I wish I had graphs for you. I have graphs somewhere, but I want to dig through that. So basically our goal was to build this so that it scales horizontally. So you can put a load balancer in front of this and it's stateless. So, wait a second. WebSockets can't be stateless, but the case is when they reconnect, the back end can handle who looks up, who was connected to what server. And right now we don't do a lot. We primarily built the system to handle pushing to appliances, regardless of, you don't really need WebSockets for that, but WebSockets gives you the benefit of built-in ping pong. So each time a appliance sends a ping and a pong, the server looks and knows when that appliance checked in. So previously we had this problem of, it's just long polling, so our appliances call home and, well, we really don't know. If they're down, they're down. We don't know how long they've been down. You can't really do anything. They're stranded if that's the case. So what ends up happening is you have no idea where your appliances are. And so now with the ping pong, I know each time when an appliance checks in, I can look and see, this is a neat little thing that I built for this purpose. It runs on Twisted, which is a really cool Python framework that I've never used before. It basically is just a big execution loop and gives you the benefit of being able to, sorry, I'm doing two things at once. So, one sec. Yeah, sure. Well, this is just me connecting. I'm opening a route so that I can actually connect to this thing. Well, so I don't know how many of you use Hamachi, but Hamachi's not working. Shame on them, don't use them. But anyway, this is a client list so that we can reference, this is the tool this diagram was designed explicitly for our support team, so it's not terribly accurate. Just to explain why this works and so that they can troubleshoot this a little bit better. Oh, well, that's not working. Yeah, so this is all the support team needs to know. But going back to Twisted's really cool because it's a huge execution loop, and they have this thing called a defer. And so what a defer is you can specify a callback function, and then you get to call that whenever you want to. So for example, I use this to handle timeouts between the Gimme server and the appliance. So if the appliance, we send a response, or we send a command to the appliance, it executes, and we get a response. Well, what if the appliance times out? That just leaves the WebSocket hanging. That has to be handled on the front end HTTP that sends commands through the appliance. If you were to draw it out here, the Gimme server talks to the web server via HTTPS, right? It's just a typical curl. Then the Gimme server sends communication and receives communication from the devices. So you can basically send a command to any device via a curl command, and it works relatively well. There are user or developer error, I guess that's what you call it. But yeah, Twisted, and it uses Autobahn to handle the WebSocket implementation.
Just keep trying.
Just keep trying, there we go. It uses Autobahn to handle the WebSocket implementation. So when I wrote this, I had no idea what WebSockets were. I had no idea what I was gonna use to run it. You can really easily find something like Twisted or Autobahn through a quick Google search. Really great documentation and great tools to use. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's not bad at all. I highly recommend that everybody take a look at it. Thanks.
Do we have anybody?
Just keep trying.
Do we have anybody in the room who's really bad at these things, but it's not tornado? All right, Josh is in here.
Does this work the direct?
It should, well, we don't know. Can you disconnect from the?
I'm on the guest network. Well, I see it.
Gotta go on the regular.
Let's
Let's keep on hacking all our people.
Games.
Next month. Here.
What did we decide? This was co-working?
Yeah, sorry.
Gotcha. Maybe wait for it. All right.
Cool. So tomorrow's the startup crawl, as you guys know. And what is it showing now? Not this. That is not the right thing. All right, there it goes. So tomorrow is the startup crawl, as I assume most of you guys know. And so we're one of the companies on it, and Peter wanted people to give talks a bit about some of the startups that are on it, that we're using Python around town here. So real quickly, I'm a data scientist at a company called Civitas Learning. We're located downtown on West 5th Street. We're a 100-person startup, been around for about 3 years. We work with universities around the country, about 50 of them right now, and we're trying to use higher education data to improve student success, and our goal is to graduate 1 million more students. So how do we do that? Well, we've got, basically it's all about doing different things with data science and doing different things with university data. And we're trying to impact them on all different levels, both on the administrative level, the faculty level, the advisor level, and on the student level. So one of our products, for example, Loom here, basically the way it works is it tries to predict how successful students are going to be in the future using some machine learning, and then basically lets you break it down by specific things about those students. So you want to know something about, well, how will students who are taking this much financial aid, what is their chance of success? How much does it affect their chance of success if we give them more or less financial aid? Those sorts of things, that's what this is all about, helping them come up with good policies so they can see down the road, okay, maybe we need to change our policies and really look at who we're helping with, say, a new scholarship program or something like that. We have another product, Inspire, that's more about
helping faculty and advisors take a look at students who are not doing well. Either you have a student who had really good grades for a while and all of a sudden dive bombed, a student who was really engaged in class and all of a sudden stopped logging into that course's software, something like that. And you can alert the advisor, alert the faculty member and say, hey, there might be something going on with this student, maybe you should interact with them, maybe we can see if there's something we can help them with. And then degree map, if any of you, many of you were college students and you probably remember what a pain in the butt it was to plan out your 4-year degree plan. I mean, just figuring out like what courses were required, what courses you needed to get a degree, that sort of thing. This software is supposed to do that and more. It's also going to do things like make recommendations for you based on your performance in previous semesters. Like recommending, hey, you're in this major right now, but students like you actually did really well in this major as well, and you might want to consider it. And look, you even have this many credits towards that degree, so you could get that sort of thing. So where do we use Python in all this? So I'm on the data science side, and I'm in a very research-oriented position. I'm really just right now kind of researching things that we're going to be doing probably a year or two from now. But basically, we use sort of all Python all over the place in what we're doing in data science. Python, has a lot of beautiful packages for data science. So we're using all the standard stuff you might be used to. Anaconda, is just the easiest way to get all of those tools installed super easily. Python notebooks are the best way to work. SQL Alchemy is a nice little way to use SQL from Python. You don't have to call it using anything else crazily, and then you can pull all your data from SQL into Python and do fun stuff with it. Pandas, of course, if you're not using Pandas for data science, I don't know what you're doing. Scikit-learn makes machine learning is the easiest way to do machine learning by far. And then Bokeh is a visualization option. It's not the best in the world, I'll say. I think they're still working on it. They're still in development, so I think it's great for where it's at right now. But there's unfortunately kind of a lack of great visualization options in Python, and that would be my one critique of it. So super quick demo here of like something I work on, and of course now it's going to all look funny and whatever as it. Okay, so but we'll see if this works here. So this is just something I was working on. Basically working again an IPython notebook here, using that to get a connection, using SQL Alchemy here, get a connection to a database, use some functions we've defined to make a nice pretty plot here. Basically what I'm plotting here is a visualization of a bunch of students' transcripts, and then we're grouping them by who has similar transcripts. So each vertically we have students on this axis, we have courses on this axis, and you can see, oh, these students have taken a different pattern of courses than these guys here, and then maybe these guys here. So you can get some idea of that. That sort of thing. Right now the Bokeh tooltips aren't working. I think it screwed up when I hooked up to this projector, but that's what happens when you try to do live demos of things. But yeah, otherwise Bokeh is pretty nice, easy way to do it. Makes all this stuff, makes some pretty visualizations, has some cool interactive stuff as well. And finally, I'll say, you want to learn more about us, come drink with us tomorrow. We are one of the stops on the Startup Crawl, and we'll have buses coming right out to us, so you can come by and see us. And we are hiring, and we'll get to talk more about this. Next month, we'll actually be sponsoring the meetup, so we'll get to talk more about it. But I just wanted to make sure you guys knew a little bit about us, so you know to stop by, get some free food, get some free drinks tomorrow over at our place. And that's it. Thanks.
Okay, I think that pretty much wraps it up. One quick note, if you parked downstairs, you can get validated parking for $5, which is really awesome. Talk to Ashley outside. And want to say thanks once again to Krishna, is he still here? In any case, thanks to him, and thanks to Capital Factory, and of course AEG for sponsoring. I really appreciate it. See you all next month.